The crystal wine glass trembled in my hand as I watched my mother-in-law's perfectly manicured fingers drum against the mahogany dining table. Every tap felt like a countdown to my inevitable humiliation. So, Eliana, Paula's voice dripped with artificial sweetness. How's that little online shop of yours doing? Still selling those, what do you call them? Ethnic accessories. I'm Eliana Santiago, and 3 months ago, I quit my corporate job to launch my own boutique. Tonight's dinner was supposed to be a celebration of my first successful quarter. Instead, it had become another stage for Paula's theatrical disapproval. Actually, we've had a great month, I said, straightening my spine. Our handcrafted bags are selling well, and we're planning to expand into... Darling, Paula interrupted, reaching for her wine, wouldn't it be better to focus on something more substantial? Rhett's firm is always looking for marketing professionals. My husband squeezed my hand under the table. Mum, Eliana's business is substantial. She's already turning a profit. A profit? Paula laughed, the sound echoing through her massive dining room. What's that, dear? Enough to buy a new handbag from a real designer. Lauren, my sister-in-law, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. I actually bought one of Eliana's bags. The craftsmanship is incredible. Paula's eyes narrowed. Lauren, please, you're just encouraging this hobby. It's not a hobby, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. We've caught the attention of several major influencers and... Oh yes, those internet people. Paula waved her hand dismissively. Speaking of which, I had lunch with Brian Fernandez yesterday. You know, the investor you've been trying to meet with. My stomach dropped. Brian was my potential ticket to scaling the business. I'd been trying to get a meeting with him for weeks. What did you tell him? Rhett asked, his fork clattering against his plate. Only the truth, darling, that while Eliana's enthusiasm is charming, her business model lacks the sophistication needed for serious consideration. Paula dabbed her lips with her napkin. I couldn't let him waste his time. The room spun, weeks of work, carefully crafted presentations, all potentially ruined because of one lunch. You had no right, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I had every right. The Webbers have a reputation to maintain. We can't have family members running around playing shopkeeper with borrowed cultural trinkets. Borrowed? I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. These designs are based on my grandmother's heritage. Each piece tells a story of, oh, please spare us the immigrant success story. Paula rolled her eyes. It's all very touching, but this isn't some feel-good movie, Eliana. This is real life. Rhett stood beside me. That's enough, Mom. Sit down, both of you. You're making a scene. Paula turned to the butler hovering nearby. James, bring out the dessert. My phone buzzed. An email notification. I opened it under the table, my hands shaking. Dear Ms. Santiago, after careful consideration, we regret to inform you that we'll have to cancel our upcoming order. Another buzz. Another cancellation. Paula's smile grew wider as she watched my face. She knew. Somehow she knew exactly what was happening. Everything all right, dear? You look pale. Perhaps the stress of running a business is too much for you. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. Rhett closed behind. Lauren called out, Eliana, wait! In the foyer, Rhett caught my arm. I'm so sorry, I'll talk to her. Talk to her. I laughed bitterly. She's systematically destroying everything I've built. Those cancellations aren't a coincidence, Rhett. She's been calling my clients. We'll fix this, he promised, pulling me close. From the dining room, Paula's voice carried clearly. She'll thank me one day. Sometimes we need to be cruel to be kind. That's when something inside me snapped. The fear, the intimidation, the constant need to prove myself. It all crystallized into something harder, sharper. I pulled away from Rhett and walked back into the dining room. Paula looked up, surprised by my return. You know what, Paula? You're right about one thing. This isn't a feel-good movie. But you've made a serious mistake. Oh? She raised an eyebrow. And what's that? You assumed I'd break, that I'd crawl back to corporate life with my tail between my legs. But here's the thing about my grandmother's heritage. We don't break. We transform. I turned to leave, but not before catching Lauren's small smile and Paula's momentarily uncertain expression. In the car, my phone buzzed again. Another cancellation. But instead of despair, I felt something else. Determination. Paula Weber had just given me the greatest gift possible. A reason to succeed that went beyond profit margins and sales figures. She wanted to play games. Fine. But she'd forgotten one crucial detail. I had nothing left to lose. And that made me more dangerous than she could imagine. My grandmother's weathered hands traced the intricate patterns on her old shawl as I sat cross-legged on her living room floor, surrounded by my laptop, sketch papers, and a rapidly cooling cup of café con leche. Abuela, tell me again about the pattern, I said, pencil poised over my sketchbook. The one from the Resistance. Francesca's eyes sparkled with memories. Ah, mi amor. These weren't just pretty designs. Each pattern was a message, a secret code for those who knew how to read it. This spiral here? It meant safe passage. The broken line? Danger ahead. I sketched frantically, my mind racing with possibilities. 3 days had passed since Paula's dinner party disaster, and I'd already lost 60% of my confirmed orders. But sitting here, listening to my grandmother's stories, I knew exactly what I had to do. My phone rang. Rhett. Hey, love. How's the damage control going? It's not, I admitted, adding shading to my sketch, but I have a different plan. I'm liquidating our savings. Silence crackled over the line. Eliana, that's everything we have. I know. But I'm creating something new, something that matters. I looked at my grandmother, who was now humming softly as she folded her shawl. Remember how you always said I should tell my story? Well, I'm finally ready. Paula will hate it, he said, but I could hear the smile in his voice. That's just a bonus. After hanging up, I showed my sketches to Francesca. Her eyes widened. Mi niña, these are the patterns from the Resistance, but different. Modern interpretations, I explained. Each piece will tell a story of survival, of fighting back, but with a twist that speaks to today's world. The doorbell rang. Lauren stood on the porch, clutching a thick manila envelope. Can I come in? She asked, glancing nervously over her shoulder. I have something you need to see. Inside, Lauren spread documents across the coffee table, displacing my sketches. I found these in Mom's study, she said. She's been embezzling from her own charity for years. The numbers don't add up, and these offshore accounts. She pointed to several highlighted figures. It's bad, Eliana. Really bad. My hands shook as I examined the papers. Why are you showing me this? Lauren's eyes met mine. Because I'm tired of her destroying people. What she did to your business? It's not the first time. She ruins anyone who threatens her social standing. Francesca hobbled over, peering at the documents. Sometimes, she said softly, the greatest revolution is simply telling the truth. I stared at the evidence of Paula's fraud, then at my sketches. An idea began to form. Lauren, I need your help. Both of you. I pulled out my phone and dialed my supplier. Hi, Maria. Remember that crazy idea we discussed? I'm in. All in. The next 2 weeks became a blur of activity. I sold everything that wasn't essential, poured every penny into materials and production. Francesca's stories became the heart of each design, while Lauren secretly gathered more evidence of Paula's misconduct. My small workshop transformed into a war room of creativity. Every piece in the collection carried a hidden message, patterns that spoke of resistance, of standing up to oppression, but reimagined for modern women fighting modern battles. You're crazy, Rhett said one night watching me work, but I've never been more proud. Even though I'm risking everything. He picked up one of the finished bags, admiring the intricate pattern. Especially because of that. You're fighting back with beauty, with truth. It's brilliant. My phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. Mum's planning something big, be careful. As if on cue, an email arrived from my remaining major client cancelling their order. My hands trembled as I opened my banking app, checking our account balance. The numbers made my stomach lurch. We're almost out of money, I whispered. Rhett wrapped his arms around me. Then we've got nothing left to lose. Francesca, who had been quietly observing from her chair, spoke up. When they took everything from us, that's when we became most dangerous, because then we fought with our whole hearts. I looked at my grandmother, this tiny woman who had survived a revolution, who had carried her stories in secret patterns and whispered them to me at bedtime. Then I looked at my collection, her legacy transformed into something new and powerful. My phone buzzed again. An unknown number. Is this Eliana? Brian Fernandez here. I've been hearing some interesting things about your new collection. I caught my breath. Mr. Fernandez, Let me be clear, he cut in. Paula Weber has been insistent about keeping me away from your business, which frankly only made me more curious. I'd like to see what you're working on. Tomorrow, if possible. After hanging up, I stood in my workshop, surrounded by my grandmother's stories made manifest in leather and silk. Paula thought she could silence me, erase me. But she'd forgotten something crucial. Some stories refused to stay buried. I picked up one of the bags, running my fingers over the pattern that meant revolution is coming. Ready or not, Paula, I whispered. Here we go. Brian Fernandez's office felt like a fortress of glass and steel, 30 stories above the city. I clutched my sample bag tighter as his assistant led me through the doors. These patterns, Brian said, not bothering with pleasantries as he examined the bag. They're unlike anything I've seen in the market. Tell me about them. I placed my grandmother's shawl on his desk. Each design tells a story of resistance. This one, for example. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smirked. That's the third time Paula has called in the last hour. She seems very concerned about our meeting. I'm not surprised, I said, keeping my voice steady. She's invested a lot of energy in destroying my business. Yes, she mentioned something about protecting me from a bad investment. He set the phone aside. What she didn't mention was that your initial sales figures were impressive. Very impressive. A knock at the door interrupted us. Lauren burst in, ignoring the protesting assistant. Sorry I'm late, she said, dropping into the chair beside me. Traffic was terrible. Brian raised an eyebrow. Ms. Weber, this is unexpected. I'm here to support my sister-in-law, Lauren announced, pulling out a tablet. And to show you something interesting about my mother's charitable foundation. The one you've been considering partnering with? His expression sharpened. Go on. Lauren pulled up the documents she'd discovered, explaining the discrepancies while I sat in stunned silence. I hadn't expected her to be so bold. These are serious allegations, Brian said, studying the numbers. They're not allegations, Lauren replied. They're facts. Mum's been stealing from her own charity for years, using it as her personal piggy bank while pretending to help underprivileged women. Brian leaned back, steepling his fingers. And you're showing me this because? Because, I cut in, we're offering you a better investment opportunity. One with actual impact. I pulled out my business plan, spreading it across his desk. Each piece in my collection will partner with a legitimate women's organization. Real help for real women, with complete transparency. Plus, Lauren added, the designs are incredible. And they come with a built-in market of women who are tired of being silenced. Brian's phone buzzed again. Paula's name flashed on the screen. Should I take this? He asked, a slight smile playing at his lips. Actually, Lauren said, put it on speaker. He did. Brian, darling. Paula's voice filled the room. Please tell me you haven't met with that girl yet. Her little ethnic crafts project is beneath you. Now about my foundation's fundraiser next month. Paula, Brian interrupted, I'm in a meeting with Eliana and Lauren. The silence that followed was deafening. Lauren? Paula's voice cracked. What are you doing there? The right thing, Mom. Finally. Brian ended the call. Well, ladies, you've certainly made this interesting. He picked up one of my bags again. Tell me more about your production capacity. An hour later, Lauren and I stood in the elevator, still processing what had happened. I can't believe he's investing, I whispered, and that you came. Lauren gripped my hand. I've spent my whole life watching Mom crush people's dreams. I couldn't let her do it to you, too. My phone chimed with a text from Rhett. Mum's on the warpath. She knows about the meeting, coming home early. She's going to disown you, I told Lauren. Probably, she agreed. But you know what? For the first time in my life, I don't care. We stepped out of the elevator into chaos. Paula stood in the lobby, her perfect makeup unable to hide her fury. How dare you, she hissed at Lauren. Conspiring against your own mother? No, Mom. How dare you? How dare you steal from charity? How dare you hurt everyone who doesn't fit your perfect image? Security guards were moving our way. Paula noticed too and lowered her voice. You have no idea what you've done. I'll cut you off. Both of you will be nothing. I stepped between them. That's where you're wrong, Paula. We're not nothing. We're everything you're afraid of. Women who won't be silenced. You'll regret this, she spat, but her voice trembled. No, Lauren said quietly. The only thing I regret is not standing up to you sooner. As Paula stormed out, Brian appeared behind us. Impressive show, he said. I trust you'll bring that same fire to our partnership. The collection launches in 3 weeks, I confirmed. Will you be there? Wouldn't miss it. He handed me a check. Your first investment installment. Don't make me regret this. Outside, Lauren and I stood in the sunshine, still shaking from the confrontation. What now? She asked. I looked at the check in my hand, then at my phone where pictures of the collection's samples waited to be posted. Now, we launch a revolution, one handbag at a time. Lauren linked her arm through mine. Mum's going to try to stop us. Let her try, I said, thinking of my grandmother's resistance patterns. Some stories are stronger than fear. We walked away from the building, leaving Paula's world of artificial perfection behind. Ahead of us lay 3 weeks of hard work, but for the first time, I felt truly unstoppable. We had the truth on our side, and as my grandmother always said, truth was the strongest pattern of all. The morning of the launch, I arrived at the venue at dawn, my heart pounding as I unlocked the doors. The gallery space we'd rented was perfect, industrial chic with exposed brick walls that made the perfect backdrop for my collection. Looking good, boss, Maria, my lead seamstress, called out as she wheeled in the first rack of bags, though you might want to check social media. My stomach dropped as I pulled out my phone. The trending hashtag made my blood run cold. Fake designer. It's everywhere, Lauren said, rushing in with her tablet. Anonymous sources claiming you stole the designs that they're mass-produced knockoffs from overseas factories. I scrolled through the posts, each one worse than the last. Paula? Has to be, Lauren agreed. She's been meeting with her PR team all week. My phone rang. Brian. Tell me these allegations aren't true, he said without preamble. They're lies, I said, my voice firm. Every piece is original, inspired by my grandmother's resistance patterns. I can prove it. You'd better. The press is already asking questions. After hanging up, I called Rhett. Your mother's really done it this time, I said when he answered. I know. I'm with her now. He paused. She's hosting a press breakfast, talking about the importance of authentic design and cultural appreciation. I nearly dropped the phone. She's what? Says she's protecting the industry from frauds. Eliana, she's got photos of similar-looking bags from other designers. But those designs came from my grandmother. They're family patterns. Then prove it, he said simply. I looked around the gallery where my team was setting up, at the centerpiece display still empty, waiting for the star of the collection. Abuela, I said into the phone, I need you. Now, bring everything. 2 hours later, Francesca arrived with a trunk full of history. Together, we transformed one corner of the gallery into a living timeline. Her original shawls, photographs, documented stories of the resistance movements, all leading to my modern interpretations. Mi amor, she said, arranging her shawls. Your mother-in-law doesn't understand. These patterns aren't just designs, they're survival stories. The first reporters started arriving, drawn by Paula's allegations. But instead of finding a scandal, they found my grandmother holding court, captivating them with tales of revolution and resistance, showing how each pattern evolved from necessity to fashion. This spiral, she told a mesmerized journalist, it meant safe passage during the uprising. Now my granddaughter has transformed it into a symbol of modern women's journey. See how it flows into the bag's structure? Lauren burst in mid-afternoon. Mom's furious. Her breakfast backfired. Everyone's talking about the fascinating heritage angle of your collection. Good, I said, adjusting a display, because we're about to give them something bigger to talk about. I pulled out the centerpiece of the collection, a large tote bag with an intricate pattern that, at first glance, looked purely decorative. But embedded within the design were numbers, dates, and amounts matching the records Lauren had found of Paula's embezzlement. "Is that what I think it is?" Lauren whispered. The truth hidden in plain sight, just like my grandmother's resistance patterns. The gallery filled as launch time approached. Brian arrived with potential buyers. Fashion bloggers circulated, photographing everything. Even Rhett showed up, looking both proud and nervous. Then Paula walked in. She moved through the crowd like a shark, her designer heels clicking on the concrete floor. "Quite the little museum you've created," she said, eyeing the heritage display. "Though I doubt anyone's actually buying." "Actually," Brian stepped forward, "we've had significant pre-orders. The heritage angle is resonating strongly with consumers tired of soulless luxury brands." Paula's smile tightened. "How nice. Though I wonder about the authenticity of these so-called resistance patterns." "Why don't you ask me yourself?" Francesca appeared beside us, her small frame radiating dignity. "After all, I lived them." The crowd quieted, sensing drama. "You know, Paula," I said, leading her to the centerpiece display, "some patterns tell stories we'd rather keep hidden, like this one." I watched her face as she examined the bag, saw the exact moment she recognized the numbers woven into the design. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "Try me." "Ladies and gentlemen," I addressed the crowd, "I'd like to tell you about this special piece. It's inspired by my grandmother's belief that truth, like beauty, deserves to be shared." Paula grabbed my arm. "Think carefully about what you're doing." I looked at her perfectly manicured hand on my arm, then at my grandmother's weathered fingers tracing her resistance patterns, and finally at Lauren, who nodded slightly. "The truth is," I continued, my voice carrying across the gallery, "every pattern tells a story. The question is, which stories are we brave enough to tell?" Paula's hand fell away as cameras flashed. In that moment, looking at her face, I realized the launch wasn't just about my collection anymore. It was about every woman who'd ever been told to stay quiet, to play small, to accept less than she deserved. And I was done being quiet. The morning after the launch, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Fashion blogs were calling the collection revolutionary. Major retailers wanted meetings. But the message that made my hands shake came from Paula's lawyer. "Cease and desist," I read aloud to Lauren over coffee. "Any interpretation of financial records in your designs constitutes defamation," Lauren snorted. "Defamation requires the statements to be false. Those numbers are real." "She's scared," Rhett said, joining us at my kitchen table. "The charity gala is next week and ticket sales are down. People are asking questions." My phone lit up with another call. A morning show wanted an interview. Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. Brian strode in, tablet in hand. "Have you seen the numbers? Pre-orders have tripled since last night, but that's not why I'm here." He turned the tablet toward us. "Look who's trending." A video was going viral. Paula at my launch, her face contorting as she examined the centerpiece bag. Someone had captured the exact moment she recognized her own fraud woven into the pattern. "The internet is calling it the guilty look," Brian said. "It's becoming a meme." "Mom's going to lose it," Lauren whispered. Right on cue, my phone rang, Paula's number. "Put it on speaker," Rhett said. I did. "You think you're clever," Paula's voice trembled with rage. "But you've made a terrible mistake. The gala is next week. Every important person in this city will be there. And when I'm done, you'll wish you'd never touched a sewing machine." "Is that a threat, Paula?" "It's a promise. By the way, I've invited several intellectual property lawyers. They're very interested in examining your grandmother's so-called original patterns. The line went dead. She wouldn't, Lauren gasped. Going after Abuela's patterns? That's low even for her. I grabbed my keys. Come on, we need to see Francesca. We found my grandmother in her garden calmly drinking tea. When I told her about Paola's threat, she laughed. Mi amor, let her bring her lawyers. I have something to show you. She disappeared into her house, returning with a dusty box. I was waiting for the right time. Inside were dozens of yellow documents, official patents and design registrations dating back decades. You registered the patents? I breathed. Of course. When we came to this country, I learned quickly about protecting what's yours. She smiled. Your mother-in-law isn't the first bully I've faced. Brian, who'd followed us, was already photographing the documents. This changes everything. These registrations, they're gold. And the timing. What timing? I asked. The fashion world loves drama, he said. Paula's gala is next week. What if we time our next move perfectly? Lauren's eyes lit up. The gala invitations haven't gone out yet. Mum's been delayed choosing the perfect design. I might have an idea, I said slowly, pulling out my sketchbook. But I'll need your help, Lauren. All of your help. Over the next few days, we worked in secret. Lauren provided the guest list. Brian connected me with a high-end printer. Francesca shared more stories, more patterns, each one now proven legally mine. The night before the gala invitations were supposed to go out, Lauren called in a panic. Mom's suspicious. She's asking questions about the printer delay. Is everything ready? I asked. Yes. The invitations are perfect. Each one has your special pattern embedded in the design. When the story breaks during the gala, everyone will already have the evidence in their hands, I finished. That night, I couldn't sleep. Rhett found me in my workshop tracing patterns on scratch paper. Having second thoughts? He asked. No. Yes. Maybe. I looked up at him. This will destroy her. She tried to destroy you first, he reminded me. Multiple times. I know, but my phone buzzed. A text from Lauren. Mom just approved the invitations. They're going out tomorrow morning. Last chance to back out. I thought about Paula's smug face at that first dinner party, her deliberate dismantling of my business, her threats against my grandmother's legacy. No backing out, I texted back. Rhett wrapped his arms around me. Whatever happens, I'm with you. The next morning, 500 invitations went out to the city's elite. 500 pieces of evidence disguised as elegant party invitations, each bearing a pattern that told the true story of Paula's charity fraud. My phone rang. Brian. It's done, he said. The invitations are delivered, and I've just confirmed our spot at the gala. Front row seats to watch it all unfold. I hung up and walked to my window, watching the morning sun rise over the city. In mansions and penthouses across town, Paula's carefully curated guest list was receiving their invitations, unknowingly holding the keys to her downfall in their manicured hands. 1 week, I whispered to myself, 1 week until the truth comes out in the most public way possible. My phone buzzed again, a message from Paula. The invitations are perfect, dear. Perhaps you're learning something about class after all. I smiled at the irony. Yes, Paula, I thought. I've learned quite a lot about class. And next week, you'll learn about consequences. The ballroom of the Grand Plaza Hotel glittered with crystal chandeliers and Paula's carefully curated guest list. I adjusted my dress, one of my own designs, naturally, and watched the crowd through the service entrance. Ready? Lauren appeared beside me, stunning in midnight blue. Mum's about to make her entrance. Are the accountants here? She nodded. Front row, just like you asked. They've reviewed all the evidence. They're just waiting for the signal. The crowd hushed as Paula swept in, resplendent in designer couture. She took the stage with practiced grace, tapping the microphone. Welcome, everyone. Tonight we celebrate 10 years of our foundation's work. She paused, scanning the crowd. Her smile faltered when she spotted me. Work that has touched countless lives. I checked my watch. Any minute now. If you'll all take out your invitations, Paula continued, you'll notice a special design element, a pattern that represents our commitment to— Excuse me, a voice called out. An elderly man in an expensive suit stood up, invitation in hand. Could you explain these numbers woven into the pattern? Paula's face went blank. Numbers. Yes, another guest chimed in. They look like account transfers. Quite substantial ones. The whispers started. All around the ballroom, people were examining their invitations more closely, phones out, comparing notes. This can't be right, someone said loudly. These dates match unauthorized withdrawals from the Foundation's accounts. Paula's hands gripped the podium. I'm sure there's some mistake. No mistake, Mrs. Weber. One of the accountants stood up. These numbers match exactly with our investigation's findings. Funds meant for women's education programs, diverted to personal accounts. The whispers turned to murmurs. Phones were lighting up everywhere as guests photographed their invitations. This is absurd, Paula announced, but her voice shook. These invitations were designed by… She looked directly at me. I stood up slowly. By me, I said clearly. Using my grandmother's resistance patterns, the same ones you tried to discredit, except this time they're telling a modern story of corruption. Security, Paula called out. Remove her. I wouldn't, Brian stood up. Not unless you want to add assault charges to the fraud allegations. Paula's perfect composure cracked. Lauren, darling, help Mommy explain. Explain what, Mom? Lauren's voice carried across the suddenly silent room. How you stole from your own charity. How you used that money to maintain your social status while destroying anyone who threatened it. I did it for you. Paula's voice rose hysterically. Everything I did was to maintain our position, our influence. No, Lauren said quietly. You did it for yourself. The room erupted in chaos. Reporters who'd been invited to cover the gala were suddenly conducting a very different kind of interview. Phones were ringing as board members called their lawyers. And in the middle of it all, Paula stood frozen at the podium. I made my way toward her, but Rhett got there first. Mum, he said softly, it's over. Paula's face crumpled. For a moment, I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. Real, raw fear in the eyes of a woman who'd always been so carefully controlled. You don't understand, she whispered. Without this, without my reputation, I'm nothing. Something twisted in my chest. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? To see her broken, humiliated, just as she'd tried to humiliate me. But watching her stand there, her perfect world crashing down, I felt no triumph, only a hollow sadness. Mrs. Weber? A police officer appeared beside her. We need you to come with us. As they led her away, she turned to me one last time. I hope you're happy now. I'm not, I said honestly. But maybe that's the difference between us. The media frenzy lasted for hours. By midnight, Juice Charity Gate scandal was trending nationwide. Lauren was speaking with Foundation board members about emergency restructuring. Brian was handling press inquiries about our partnership. I found myself on the hotel's terrace away from the chaos. Rhett joined me, loosening his tie. You okay? He asked. I thought this would feel different, I admitted. More satisfying. Because you're not like her, he said simply. Your grandmother's patterns weren't just about resistance. They were about survival. About building something better. My phone buzzed. A message from Francesca. Remember, mi amor, true victory isn't in destroying your enemies. It's in building something they can't tear down. I looked back through the glass doors at the scattered remains of Paula's gala. At Lauren, strong and capable, already working to save the Foundation's mission. At the guests examining my designs with new interest, seeing the power of patterns that told the truth. So what now? Rhett asked. I squeezed his hand, thinking of all the women who could be helped by a properly run foundation, of all the stories still waiting to be told through my designs. Now, I said, we build something better. Inside, the chaos continued, but out here, Under the stars, I finally understood. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in destroying your enemy's world. It's in creating a better one of your own. 3 days after the gala, I stood outside the county jail, my heart pounding. The guard led me through security to a stark visiting room where Paula sat, wearing an orange jumpsuit that clashed horribly with her perfectly maintained hair. "Come to gloat?" she asked as I sat down. "No, I came to make you an offer." She laughed bitterly. "What could you possibly offer me now? You've taken everything. Actually, I'm offering to give something back." I placed a folder on the table between us. The foundation. That got her attention. "Lauren and I have been working with the board. They're willing to drop some of the charges if you agree to our terms." "Which are?" "Step down completely. Let us restructure the foundation with full transparency. And," I took a deep breath, "work with us to make it what it should have been all along." Paula's perfectly plucked eyebrows shot up. "You want me to work with you? You have connections we need. Real relationships with donors. Knowledge of how these circles work. Use that for good this time." "And why would I do that?" "Because your other option is fighting federal fraud charges. Your choice." She studied me for a long moment. "You're nothing like what I expected, you know. When Rhett first brought you home, I thought you were just another social climber." "Maybe that's been your problem all along," I said. "You see everyone as either a threat or a tool." The door opened and Lauren walked in. Paula's composure cracked slightly. "Hi, Mom," Lauren said softly. "Lauren, darling, you look different." "I feel different. Stronger." Lauren sat beside me. "We've been going through the Foundation's records. You actually had some amazing ideas in the beginning, before it became about status and power." Paula's hands trembled slightly. "It was never supposed to—" She stopped, composing herself. "What exactly are you proposing?" I pulled out the paperwork. A new board structure. Lauren as executive director. You as a special advisor, once the legal issues are resolved. And a completely new mission focusing on women entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds. Using my designs, I added, each piece telling a story of transformation. Real women's stories. Paula picked up the papers, scanning them with practiced eyes. "This could actually work," she murmured. "The donor base would love the redemption angle." "This isn't about angles," Lauren said firmly. "It's about doing something meaningful." A guard announced visiting time was ending. Paula handed back the papers. "I'll have my lawyer review these." As we stood to leave, she called out, "Eliana?" I turned. "Your grandmother's patterns. They really are extraordinary." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was something. Outside the jail, Lauren hugged me tight. "Thank you for giving her a chance." "She's still your mother," I said, "and maybe she can learn to be a better one." My phone buzzed, Brian calling. "Turn on the news," he said without preamble. Lauren and I rushed to her car, flipping on the radio. The story was everywhere. Fashion industry rallies behind emerging designers' anti-corruption collection. "The orders are pouring in," Brian said. "Everyone wants the bags that took down a corrupt empire. But that's not all. Major retailers are asking about your full line, the one with your grandmother's original patterns." I looked at Lauren, who was grinning. "Think bigger," she said. That evening, I gathered everyone at my grandmother's house. Rhett, Lauren, Brian, and most importantly, Francesca herself. "I have an idea," I announced, spreading out fresh sketches on the dining table. "What if we combine the Foundation's new mission with my designs, each piece created in partnership with a woman entrepreneur, telling their story through patterns?" "A mentorship program," Lauren added excitedly, "connecting established businesses with startups." "Using Mum's network for good," Rhett nodded. Brian was already typing on his tablet. "The press will love it. Redemption, innovation, social impact. It's perfect." But I was watching my grandmother, who had been quietly examining my sketches. "Abuela, what do you think?" She picked up one of the drawings, a design that incorporated both her resistance patterns and modern elements. "When I created these patterns," she said slowly, "they were about survival, about keeping hope alive in dark times." She smiled. "But you, mi amor, you've made them about thriving, about helping others rise. Is that okay? I asked softly. She cupped my face in her weathered hands. It's better than okay. It's exactly what they were meant to become. My phone chimed with a message from Paula's lawyer. She was accepting our offer. Well, Brian said, raising his coffee cup, here's to new patterns. To new stories, Lauren added. To second chances, Rhett smiled. I looked around at this unlikely family we'd created, my husband, his sister, my grandmother, our allies, and felt something settle in my heart. The patterns of our lives were shifting, weaving together into something stronger and more beautiful than before. To transformation, I said, and we all raised our cups to that. The autumn breeze carried the scent of coffee and fresh paint through the open windows of our new flagship store. I adjusted the display of handcrafted bags, each one telling a different entrepreneur's story through its patterns. The reporters are here, Lauren called from the front, and Mom's car just pulled up. My hands trembled slightly as I straightened the centerpiece, a recreation of my grandmother's original shawl, now transformed into a modern messenger bag, the pattern that started it all. Paula entered first, looking elegant but subdued in one of my designs, a silk scarf featuring a pattern that meant redemption in my grandmother's code. The ankle monitor beneath her pants leg served as a humble reminder of consequences still being paid. The place looks magnificent, she said, running her fingers along a display, though perhaps the lighting could be adjusted to— Mom, Lauren warned. Paula caught herself. Sorry, old habits. The store filled quickly with journalists, photographers, and most importantly, the women from our mentorship program. Each one stood proudly beside the designs they'd helped create, ready to share their stories. Francesca arrived last, supported by Rhett. She paused at the entrance, taking in the scene. Mi niña, she whispered, tears in her eyes. Look what you've built. Brian stepped forward, tapping a glass for attention. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the grand opening of Pattern Revolution's flagship store. But this is more than just a boutique. It's the home base for our foundation's mentorship program. I took the microphone, my voice steady. Every piece you see here represents a collaboration between established designers and emerging entrepreneurs. Each pattern tells a story of transformation. Like this one, Paula stepped forward, surprising everyone. This scarf I'm wearing, it represents my own journey. From someone who used power to crush others, to learning how to lift them up instead, the crowd murmured. This wasn't in the script. My daughter and daughter-in-law taught me something valuable, Paula continued. True influence isn't about maintaining status. It's about creating opportunity. Lauren squeezed my hand as Paula turned to us. I'm sorry, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. For everything I did to hurt you both. A photographer's flash captured the moment. Paula Weber, humbled but dignified, extending an olive branch in front of the world. And now, Brian jumped in smoothly, I'd like to introduce our first group of mentees. One by one, women stepped forward to share their stories. A refugee who designed bags incorporating traditional crafts from her homeland. A domestic violence survivor whose patterns symbolized breaking free. A former inmate whose designs represented second chances. This is real power, I whispered to Paula, who stood beside me. Not what you can take from others, but what you can help them build. She nodded, dabbing at her eyes with the corner of her scarf. I'm beginning to understand that. The event culminated with Francesca demonstrating how to read the resistance patterns, teaching a new generation the secret language of survival and hope. Journalists scribbled frantically, cameras flashed, and social media lit up with images of my grandmother's weathered hands tracing patterns that had once saved lives. As the crowd thinned, a young woman approached me clutching a portfolio. I've been following your story, she said nervously. I have some designs, patterns from my own culture. Come, I led her to the consultation area. Tell me your story. Later that night, after the cameras left and the signs were turned off, our small family gathered in the store. Lauren and Paula sat together, tentatively discussing foundation plans. Rhett and Brian reviewed sales figures. Francesca dozed in our custom-designed reading nook. I stood in the center, surrounded by the physical manifestation of our journey. Patterns of resistance transformed into symbols of progress. Stories of pain turned into testimonies of triumph. "Penny for your thoughts?" Rhett asked, wrapping his arms around me. "I was just thinking about that dinner party," I said, "when Paula first tried to destroy my business. How it felt like the end of everything. And now? Now I realize it was just the beginning of something bigger than revenge or success." "Speaking of beginnings," Lauren called out, "Mom has an announcement." Paula stood, smoothing her scarf. "I've decided to donate my house for the Foundation's new training center." "The house?" I gasped. "But that's your pride and joy." "It was," she admitted. "But I'm learning to take pride in different things now." Francesca stirred from her nap. The strongest pattern of all, transformation. I looked around at these people who had become my unlikely team. At Paula, who was learning to channel her influence for good. At Lauren, who had found her strength. At my grandmother, whose resistance patterns had evolved into symbols of empowerment. The store's lights dimmed automatically, casting gentle shadows that made the patterns seem to dance across the walls. Each design told a story, of survival, of change, of hope. But together they told an even bigger story, that sometimes the most beautiful patterns emerge from the darkest threads. "Ready to go home?" Rhett asked. "Actually," I smiled, pulling out my sketchbook, "I have some new ideas I want to work on. Because that's the thing about patterns, they never really end. They just keep evolving, weaving new stories, creating new possibilities. And this was just the beginning of ours."
In the sunlit kitchen, I was preparing breakfast. As the aroma of toast wafted through the room, Michael came down the stairs in his school uniform. The sight of him in his navy blue blazer filled me with pride, just as it did every morning. "Good morning, Michael." "Good morning, Mom." My 15-year-old son seemed to grow taller with each passing day. I fondly recalled the years we'd spent together since the divorce 4 years ago. Though I'd been filled with uncertainty then, this life had become our perfect comfort zone. On the table, I'd laid out Michael's favorites: blueberry jam, peanut butter, and fresh coffee from Dunkin' Donuts. "Mom, are you going to be late again today?" Michael asked while spreading jam on his toast. The morning light streaming through the window gently illuminated his handsome profile. "Yes, I have an important contract meeting in the afternoon. It's for a property in Beacon Hill. But I'll definitely be home by evening." "Okay. I have soccer practice, so I think I'll be home around 7. Michael was a regular player on Newton North High School's soccer team. He excelled in his studies too, particularly in math and science, where he ranked among the top in his grade. He handled AP courses with ease. He was my pride and joy. After breakfast and seeing Michael off, I changed into my suit. I carefully applied my makeup in front of the mirror and fastened my pearl necklace. I'd bought this necklace as a reward to myself after closing my first major deal. It had become my lucky charm. At 10 a.m., I was preparing for a luxury apartment viewing. As a skilled agent with Coldwell Banker, I was determined to secure another contract today. The view of Boston from the glass elevator was beautiful as always. The sparkle of the Charles River seemed to predict today's success. It was exactly a year ago when this job led me to a life-changing encounter. My meeting with James Foster. As vice president of State Street Corporation, he was considering purchasing this apartment. From our first meeting, I was drawn to his gentlemanly demeanor. His tall figure in a dark gray suit, his intelligent gaze, and occasional gentle smile. After the deal closed, a series of coincidences brought us together. We dated carefully, taking our time, and then became engaged. More than anything, I was overjoyed that Michael accepted him. We'd spend holidays going to brunch together or cheering at Michael's soccer games. A new family dynamic naturally formed. "Michael, I'd like to marry your mother." One evening after dinner, James addressed Michael with a sincere expression. The candlelight on the table softly illuminated that moment. "James, I'm completely in favor." I still vividly remember Michael's smile. That night, James opened a bottle of premium champagne. The two adults toasted, while Michael was served sparkling cider. However, lately, small worries had begun to cross my mind. I started noticing neighborhood gossip about 2 weeks ago. While shopping at Whole Foods, I overheard whispers behind me. "Looks like she's still hanging around this area." Really? It's been 3 years since the divorce was finalized. I know. I even saw her near the school recently. She referred to James's ex-wife, Elizabeth Foster. I'd heard rumors about how she'd fought over the division of assets during the divorce. She came from a prominent Boston family and had apparently been a successful buyer for a luxury boutique before marriage. But I'd avoided digging deeper. The past was the past. We had our future to look forward to. I was also slightly concerned about Michael's behavior. His usual cheerfulness had dimmed, and he'd increasingly retreat to his room early, claiming he was just tired. I thought it might be typical teenage phase, but I'd noticed his hands trembling slightly while holding chopsticks at dinner. Yet when I asked, he'd just brush it off with a smile, saying, "I'm fine." That afternoon at 5 p.m., I was in the middle of an important contract negotiation at a luxury apartment in Back Bay. Just as I was about to get the final signature, my phone rang. It was the police. A stern voice reached my anxious ears. "Mrs. Wilson, please come to the station immediately regarding your son." My hands trembled. Did Michael do something? The detective responded matter-of-factly to my distressed voice. "We'll discuss the details at the station." I interrupted the negotiation, apologizing profusely, and rushed to the police station. The police station at dusk cast an ominous shadow. The gray building, illuminated by the setting sun, loomed intimidatingly before me. Still in my business suit from the interrupted meeting, I hadn't even had time to change my heels. After parking, I hurried toward the entrance. I could feel my heart racing. "Michael." Calling my son's name, I ran up the stairs. Checking my smartphone, I saw 40 minutes had passed since the call. I noticed the stares of other parents. To need police assistance in this upscale neighborhood. But now wasn't the time to worry about such things. As I opened the heavy glass doors, a blast of cold air conditioning brushed my cheeks. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, uniformed officers bustled about. The sound of my heels echoed oddly as I rushed to the reception counter. My clutch bag felt slippery with sweat. "Mrs. Wilson. We've been expecting you. Please show your identification." The receptionist spoke in an official tone while tightening her pale pink lips. I pulled out my driver's license with trembling hands. The tension typical of police stations enveloped my entire body. "Verified. Detective Morrison will be handling your case. This way, please." We proceeded down a long hallway. Posters about juvenile delinquency prevention lined the walls. To think my son would be in such a place. My throat tightened at the thought. The mother has arrived. Following the detective's voice, the interrogation room door opened. The sight before me nearly stopped my heart. Michael sat hunched in a small chair, still in his uniform, face pale, hands clasped tightly on his knees. His usually dignified expression was gone, replaced by childlike trembling. His tie was crooked, his blazer wrinkled. Michael. When I called his name, he slowly raised his head. Tear-filled eyes met mine. Dark circles had begun forming under his eyes. How frightened he must have been. Mom. I didn't do anything. His voice trembled. Looking into my son's desperately pleading eyes, I saw no lie. This was my child whom I'd lived with for 15 years. He couldn't be lying. It's okay, I'm here with you. I sat next to Michael and placed my hand on his shoulder. I could feel his body trembling slightly. Through his uniform fabric, I felt cold sweat. Mrs. Wilson. Detective Morrison sat across the table. He appeared to be around 45, with a gentle expression but sharp eyes. The deep wrinkles on his forehead suggested years of experience. On the desk were neatly arranged files and a laptop. Thank you for coming despite your busy schedule. I need to explain an important matter concerning your son. The detective began speaking in a polite tone. His voice carried a fatherly warmth. However, his next words felt cold. This afternoon, your son was allegedly involved in a shoplifting incident at the Whole Foods market in Newton District. I'd like you to view the security camera footage. The laptop screen was turned toward us. A black and white video began playing. Inside the upscale supermarket. The timestamp showed June 3, 1630. My chest tightened. At that time, surely Michael was. The footage showed a boy who looked exactly like Michael. Same height, build. Even wearing a uniform identical to what Michael had on today. The boy picked up a luxury brand wallet, checked his surroundings, and smoothly slipped it into his blazer's inner pocket. The movement was so natural, as if planned. I was speechless. The boy in the footage did look exactly like Michael. But it wasn't him. As his mother, I knew instinctively. At this time, my son was at cram school. I immediately objected. I could hear my voice rising slightly. He should have been in class at Cubic Preparatory School. If you check the attendance records. Yes, we'll verify that. Detective Morrison responded calmly. The sound of his note-taking echoed in the quiet room. However, his next words fell heavily. However, the characteristics of the person in the security footage are remarkably similar. Height, build, uniform, even the uniform worn that day matches. The detective paused the video and pointed to an enlarged section. Indeed, everything matched down to the details. The school crest on the blazer, the tie color, even the bag design. Even Michael's characteristic slightly hunched walking style. The camera angles left minimal blind spots, and the facial features, footage tracked across 6 cameras. But this is not my son. I insisted firmly. I held Michael's hand. It was cold. But I had certainty. Strong certainty in believing my son. The interrogation continued for nearly 2 hours. Alibi verification, questioning. Michael's school life, friendships, recent behavior. The questions covered every detail. My son occasionally answered with a trembling voice. I listened carefully to each word beside him. Finally, words of release came. We'll conclude for today. However, we request your continued cooperation with the investigation. We may contact you if new information emerges in the coming days. When we left the station, the sun had completely set. The early summer breeze gently caressed our tired bodies. On the way to the parking lot, Michael grabbed my sleeve. "Mom, will everyone at school find out?" His voice trembled. He must be worried about rumors at school. For a child his age, that could be a matter of life and death. Even after getting in the car, Michael remained silent. The anxiety was deeply etched on his profile, illuminated by the streetlights. His hand still trembled slightly as he fastened his seatbelt. I gripped the steering wheel tightly. I silently vowed to uncover the truth. This was the beginning of a battle I couldn't surrender as a mother. Looking at my son's reflection in the rearview mirror, I strengthened my resolve. Someone was trying to frame my son. I would expose their dark intentions. The next morning, after a sleepless night, I sat at my computer from early dawn. The morning sun streaming through the window illuminated photos of my son at school on the screen. Pictures of Michael in his uniform, chatting with friends. There must be something I could do to prove his innocence. Michael was still sleeping in his room upstairs, exhausted. Last night, I'd slept beside him for the first time in years. Watching his peaceful sleeping face as he dozed off in my arms like he used to in elementary school, I vowed to protect him. Soccer trophies lined his bedside table. His excellent report cards still proudly adorned the wall. The clock showed 5:30 a.m. As I gazed at the misty cityscape, I recalled the details of yesterday's interrogation one by one. The security camera footage. The perfect match. That in itself was unnatural. I have the right to investigate too. With trembling hands, I picked up my smartphone and called James. Though it was still early morning, he answered immediately. His usually calm voice carried a strong determination today. "I'll be right there. Let's think about this together." There was no hesitation in James's voice. 30 minutes later, he arrived at my house. He wasn't in his usual suit but dressed casually. His typically neat tie was absent today. Under his eyes, I could see traces that he too hadn't slept. "I've been looking into various things since last night," James began explaining as he opened his laptop on the table. "Let's start what we can do, separate from the police investigation. First, we need to thoroughly check the details of the crime scene." Taking a sip of coffee, he pointed to the screen. The Whole Foods Market floor plan. Security camera placement. And the situation in the store at the time of the incident. We need to review everything from scratch. We headed to the supermarket as soon as it opened. James gently held my nervous hand. The warmth of his hand slightly eased my anxious heart. "I'll help too. We'll definitely get to the truth." Thanks to James's credibility as vice president of State Street Corporation, we easily secured a meeting with the store manager. His position sometimes carried significant weight. We were also allowed to view additional security camera footage. "Actually, there's been someone I've been concerned about." A female employee in her mid-20s approached us. Her name tag read Sarah Johnson. "There's been a woman who often takes photos in the store, especially of students in uniforms. I noticed it casually at first, but it started feeling unnatural." James and I exchanged glances at her words. Sarah continued. particularly since last month, that person's visits have increased. When I'm at the register, we often make eye contact. But when we do, she quickly looks away. As we heard more details, new facts emerged one after another. The woman tended to visit at specific times. After school hours. When many students in uniforms would be shopping. Come to think of it, she seemed to take a lot of photos of students wearing the same uniform as your son. At first, I thought she might be a parent. As we carefully reviewed the security camera footage, we found several unnatural coincidences. The uniform worn by the perpetrator was indeed from Newton North High School, like Michael's. However, looking closely, it perfectly replicated features unique to Michael. The repair mark on the right sleeve. The carefully mended tear from last month's soccer game tackle, which I had fixed. This mark, visible in photos posted on social media, mysteriously appeared on the perpetrator's uniform too. Even Michael's unique habits. The slight tilt of the school badge on the left shoulder. This was a characteristic that developed from Michael always carrying his soccer bag on his left shoulder. This is. James furrowed his brow. He repeatedly rewound and checked the footage on screen. Someone is deliberately trying to impersonate Michael. And quite systematically at that. We quickly began investigating social media. Carefully checking Michael's posts and photos tagged by friends. Then we found an eerie shadow in the posts. A figure in the background. A group photo at a cafe after school. A woman's reflection in the window glass. Another photo. At the school gate. A shadowy figure in a luxury car parked in the distance. And at the soccer game. A lonely woman sitting at the edge of the bleachers. This account. James's voice trembled. His face paled at the name displayed on screen. It's Elizabeth's. His ex-wife's social media account had secretly stored photos of Michael. Him in his school uniform, after school, with friends. Looking at the posting dates, they had been intensively taken over the past 2 months. Like a stalker. Most had been taken with a telephoto lens. She often took photos in the store. Sarah's earlier words now carried heavy significance. As we printed out and arranged the photos chronologically, evidence of obsessive surveillance emerged. Michael's daily activities were recorded like a surveillance log. Feeling near certainty, we immediately contacted the police. We submitted the new evidence to Detective Morrison. This is compelling evidence. Seriousness seeped into the detective's voice. He carefully examined each photo spread out on the desk. Clear signs of stalking. This definitely suggests a premeditated crime. The police investigation intensified. Reviewing past security camera footage revealed evidence of Elizabeth's suspicious behavior. Her lurking around the high school. Purchasing the same uniform at the uniform shop. Following Michael. It told a story of almost manic obsession. New security camera footage revealed even more shocking facts. Elizabeth handing cash to a boy with the same build as Michael. The boy was later identified as a student from another high school. Part of a perfect disguise operation. The decisive evidence was captured by security cameras around Elizabeth's apartment. On the day of the incident, she returned home with shopping bags. Inside was a uniform identical to Michael's. And the suspicious boy entering and leaving her apartment. The perfect plan was slowly revealing its full scope. For her to go this far. James choked on his words. Deep sadness and confusion showed at his former wife's actions. "There must be a reason," I answered quietly. Looking out the window, I had a sense of all the pieces falling into place. Detective Morrison's voice echoed in the quiet interrogation room as he presented the decisive evidence. "She lost considerable assets in the divorce with Mr. Foster." The detective carefully turned pages, unraveling Elizabeth's past. According to the Boston Herald, until 2019, she was active in high society as a celebrity. She was also highly regarded as a buyer for luxury brands. The article showed a photo from a glamorous party. Elizabeth in an elegant designer dress, wearing a graceful smile. However, that radiance changed completely after her divorce from James. According to divorce settlement records, she lost over 95% of her assets. Furthermore, her social standing plummeted. Elizabeth's parents, concerned about their daughter's destructive lifestyle, had even excluded her from their inheritance. James let out a deep sigh at the detective's words. His expression showed complex emotions as someone who knew the truth behind the divorce. As the investigation progressed, the full scope of her revenge plot came to light. The meticulous preparations that began 2 months before the incident. Thoroughly observing Michael's daily routine, preparing identical uniforms, securing accomplices. Then executing at the most effective timing. The selection of the crime date also seemed calculated. The detective pulled out new documents. "This day, you had an important contract meeting scheduled. Moreover, it was right after the wedding date with Mr. Foster had been set." My chest tightened. Framing Michael was her perfect revenge. A plan to completely overturn our happiness as we tried to build a new family. What's more, the target was an innocent 15-year-old boy. The search of Elizabeth's apartment took place on a rainy morning. A room in an old apartment building, far from the luxury residential area. A place unimaginable from her former glamorous lifestyle. When the entrance door opened, we were stunned. The entire wall was covered with photos of Michael. Him at school, after school, with friends. Hundreds of photos arranged meticulously like observation records. Next to them were photos of James and me. Our happy expressions marked with red X's. "This will be decisive evidence." Detective Morrison pointed to a diary found on the desk. An expensive leather-bound diary. Probably a remnant from her days of glory. Inside were incredibly detailed plans. There were also detailed maps showing Michael's behavior patterns, and even James's and my schedules. Everything had been perfectly calculated. On the last page of the diary, there was a single line written in distorted handwriting. "Your happy family game ends here." The arrest was made that afternoon. Elizabeth was returning from her weekend yoga class in the upscale neighborhood. Still maintaining an elegant appearance with her silk scarf. "I haven't done anything wrong," she calmly declared, holding out her hands to the police officers as if it were someone else's problem. "You have the right to remain silent. And during the upcoming interrogation, you have the right to have a lawyer present." Elizabeth smiled, interrupting the detective's words. Her expression showed no sign of regret. Rather, it carried an air of satisfaction, as if she had accomplished something. The news of her arrest sent shockwaves through the community. A despicable revenge plot by a daughter of a prestigious Boston family. All newspapers reported it simultaneously, leaving local residents speechless. That elegant Mrs. Foster. She was always so polite. But lately, she had been acting strange. Neighborhood housewives' gossip whispered on street corners. However, our battle wasn't over yet. Later, Elizabeth's lawyer proposed a settlement. An offer to resolve things quietly in exchange for a substantial settlement amount. Probably her parents' wish to avoid scandal. We will pay $1 million. This could also serve as your son's future education fund. I immediately refused, slamming my hand on the table, the sound echoing through the conference room. My son's honor cannot be bought with money. Caroline's determination was firm. The decision to pursue criminal charges wasn't from mere vindictiveness. It was a decision to prevent similar victims in the future. And above all, it was a crucial matter affecting Michael's life. In court testimony, Elizabeth tried to justify her actions until the end. They took everything from me. They don't deserve to be happy. However, the evidence was clear. A premeditated crime. The despicable means of using a minor. And the selfish nature of the motive. The verdict came as autumn deepened. Elizabeth received a suspended prison sentence and was ordered to undergo psychiatric treatment. After all the truth came to light, an explanation meeting was held at school. Students and parents gathered in the auditorium. The principal officially acknowledged Michael's innocence and strictly prohibited rumors about the incident. We deeply regret that one of our students fell victim to such a despicable plot. However, we are sincerely pleased that the truth has come to light and Michael's innocence has been proven. After school, I went to pick up Michael. My son waiting at the school gate looked somewhat brighter. His uniform appearance was as dignified as ever. The anxious shadow was no longer visible. "Mom, thank you for believing in me." Michael showed a full smile for the first time in a while after getting in the car. There was no more hesitation in his eyes. "Of course, you're my precious son." I gently stroked his head. At the Boston District Court, the heavy wooden doors opened, and the judge entered. Everyone involved in the case sat holding their breath in the gallery. The cold air conditioning heightened the tension. My palm holding Michael's hand was slightly sweaty. James gently placed his hands on our shoulders. "The defendant is sentenced to 2 years in prison, suspended for 4 years. The judge's voice solemnly echoed. Though stern in his black robe, his eyes showed a hint of mercy. In this case, the defendant's actions were highly premeditated and malicious. However, considering the results of the psychiatric evaluation, it was deemed appropriate to provide an opportunity for rehabilitation. Elizabeth sat quietly with closed eyes in the defendant's seat. Her former arrogant attitude had disappeared, showing signs of deep fatigue. The psychiatric evaluation had revealed severe adjustment disorder underlying her actions. The loss of social status from the divorce had pushed her to the edge mentally. Furthermore, I ordered the commencement of treatment at a designated medical facility within 2 weeks of the verdict's confirmation. Also, contact with the victim's family is prohibited. Elizabeth's parents sat in the front row listening to the verdict. Her mother Mary maintained the dignified bearing befitting a former prestigious family, occasionally wiping away tears with her handkerchief. After the verdict, she approached us. "We will focus on our daughter's treatment. And I sincerely apologize for everything." Sincere words of apology. Mary's expression showed a strong will to guide her daughter in the right direction. The parents had already arranged for a specialized medical facility in a quiet New Hampshire town. She would take her first steps toward healing her mental wounds in a lush green environment. Treatment progressed carefully under Dr. Stevens, renowned in the psychiatric field. 2 counseling sessions per week. Medication. And group therapy through interaction with others facing similar issues. Gradually, changes began to appear in Elizabeth's mind. According to the facility's counselor, she gradually became able to view her actions objectively. Her relationship with her parents also began to heal. Particularly walks with her mother became a daily routine, where they would reminisce about childhood memories. 6 months after the incident, a letter arrived for us. The sender was Elizabeth Foster. The envelope bore the facility's postmark. "I am sorry." Simple yet heartfelt words of apology. The handwritten letters showed slight trembling. Written not on luxury stationery but ordinary paper, it carried a sense of sincerity. Back then, I had lost myself. "Michael, Caroline, James, my attempts to destroy your happiness can never be forgiven. Through daily therapy, as I face my distorted mind, I deeply realize this." The letter detailed her treatment progress. Her relationship with her parents was gradually healing, and she had resolved to begin a new life. She planned to open a small antique shop in the New Hampshire town. She was trying to apply her former buyer experience in a different way. "I hope this shop becomes my first step toward atonement. Though not flashy, I want to build a new life while sincerely engaging with each item." And then, as cherry blossoms heralded spring's arrival, our wedding day came at the historic St. Mary's Church in suburban Boston. Light streaming through century-old stained glass cast beautiful rainbow shadows on the altar. James smiled gently beside me in my white wedding dress. His black tuxedo conveyed dignity with warmth. And Michael stood as our witness, his expression more mature than his years. At the reception speech, Michael held the microphone with slight nervousness. As the venue fell silent, his refreshing voice rang out. "I'm happy to welcome my new dad." The venue erupted in warm applause. Among the guests was Detective Morrison. A deep trust had been built through the incident. Tears of joy glistened in the detective's eyes. "Since Mom raised me alone, she's given me so much love. Sometimes strict, but always watching over me warmly. And now, with James, no, Dad joining us, our family has grown stronger. I feel our bonds have deepened even more after overcoming that difficulty." I couldn't hold back tears at Michael's words. Beside me, James too forgot his usual composure and became misty-eyed. Our bonds, strengthened through trials, were something everyone present could feel. At the end of the reception, we released white doves with hopes for our new life. The sight of the doves taking flight was bright and strong, like our future. The gentle spring breeze seemed to bless our new beginning. A week later, a final letter arrived from Elizabeth. "I sincerely pray for your happiness. And I too will begin a new life. Moving beyond the past and taking new steps forward." It was a new beginning for everyone. Outside the window, cherry blossoms swayed in the wind, petals dancing in the air, as if throwing blessing flowers upon our new life.
The morning mist hung over Boston streets as the city slowly awakened. In the kitchen of La Maison d'Aus, on Newbury Street, my day had already begun. As I carefully rolled out pie dough, I glanced out the window. People walking down the street seemed to be moving more briskly with each passing day. Thanksgiving was approaching. "Mom, I did it." I turned around at the voice behind me to find my son Lucas proudly showing off the cupcake he had just finished decorating. Such delicate handiwork seemed beyond his 8 years. "That's wonderful, Lucas," I smiled, stroking his head. Saturday mornings had become our special time for baking together. My husband William had left early again for a meeting with clients. As the sales director at Turner Enterprises, his work knew no holidays. He was responsible for a large portion of the company's revenue. "Rachel, today's croissants are absolutely perfect." Jennifer, one of our staff members, poked her head into the kitchen with an excited report. More than half of today's croissants had sold within just an hour of opening. Just recently, we'd been featured in the Boston Globe's Notable Bakeries section, bringing even more customers to our door. We were all happily overwhelmed by the increasing number of people lining up first thing in the morning for our croissants. For me, who grew up as the daughter of a single mother in Boston's low-income South End, this success felt like a dream. I had worked desperately hard with a scholarship to pastry school, gained experience as a pastissier at a luxury hotel, and finally achieved my goal of owning my own shop. When Lucas comes home from school, he always heads straight for the kitchen. He does his homework there while occasionally helping with the baking. At a recent parent-teacher conference, he confidently announced during his Future Dreams presentation that he wanted to be a pastry chef, just like Mom. His teacher praised him as a caring child who helps bring the class together. William's work was also going extremely well. He said the major real estate development deal he closed last week would significantly contribute to meeting the company's sales targets for the year. His skills in leading his team while actively pursuing new business opportunities himself were highly regarded both inside and outside the company. However, not everyone celebrated our success. "Marrying someone of her status, it's a disgrace to our family." I still vividly remember my mother-in-law Patricia's words when William announced our marriage. For her, the CEO of Turner Enterprises and a pillar of Boston society, marriage to someone from a low-income neighborhood was completely unacceptable. Though she attended our wedding, her discriminatory attitude never changed. Even when Lucas was born, while she lavished affection on her other grandchildren, she continued to treat him coldly. At society parties, she would act as if we didn't exist, creating awkward situations for those around us. Recently, her hostility had escalated further. At Lucas's birthday party last month, she didn't show up despite receiving an invitation. Later, when Lucas happened to run into his grandmother, she declared, "Expensive presents don't suit a child with a mother from the slums." The memory of my son's sad face that day still pains my heart. Then yesterday, we received an invitation to Thanksgiving dinner, the Turner family's traditional annual gathering. Every year at this time, tension builds. "You don't have to go," William said, but I shook my head. "I want to get along with Grandma," Lucas said at the dinner table, hope shining in his eyes. I couldn't easily dismiss such an innocent wish. "Let's go," I decided. William's face showed concern, but understanding our son's wishes, he nodded quietly. Thanksgiving morning brought an especially cold wind. The streets of the Chestnut Hill neighborhood, where well-dressed people hurried about, were already decorated for the holiday. Fallen leaves danced in the air, and maple trees were dyed a deep red. I had been baking an apple pie since early morning. More than consideration for my mother-in-law, it was my professional pride that wouldn't allow me to arrive empty-handed. "Mom, is my tie straight?" Lucas nervously adjusted his collar in the back seat. His new navy suit with the light blue tie I'd chosen looked perfect for the special occasion. A silver pin adorned his small breast pocket. "Perfect," I answered, glancing at his expression in the rearview mirror. His face showed a complex mix of tension and anticipation. William's profile in the driver's seat was also more rigid than usual. I could see his hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than normal. When we arrived at the Turner mansion, several luxury cars were already lined up in the parking lot. Bentley, Mercedes, and Rolls-Royce, all gleaming in the winter sunlight. The Victorian-style building seemed to radiate a special brilliance for the occasion. The red brick exterior, elegant arched windows, and meticulously maintained front garden all spoke to the Turner family's history and authority. Opening the front door, we were met with warm air and the savory aroma of roasting turkey. The spacious hall, illuminated by sparkling chandeliers, was already filled with relatives. The women wore designer dresses, the men in tailored suits. My blouse from a boutique felt distinctly out of place. William, Rachel, Robert, my father-in-law, greeted us warmly. His mild-mannered nature always prioritized family harmony. His gray suit seemed to express both his dignity as chairman and his gentle personality. "Lucas, you've grown so tall," Robert said, gently patting his grandson's head. The surrounding relatives smiled naturally at the scene. Lucas's expression also began to relax as he reunited with his cousins. Among the group of 8-year-olds, he gradually let go of his tension. At first, everything seemed to be proceeding peacefully. The maids bustled about with table settings. The heavy silverware passed down through generations, delicately patterned white china, crystal glasses. The scene they created was as beautiful as a painting. Pure white candles burned in antique holders, their soft light reflecting off the pristine white tablecloth. In the center sat an enormous turkey. Perfectly browned, it was surrounded by traditional Thanksgiving dishes: cranberry sauce, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, and sweet potato gratin. The dessert cart elegantly displayed my apple pie alongside pumpkin and pecan pies. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats," James the butler announced, prompting about 20 family members to gather around the large dining table. The Turner cousins and their families, aunts and uncles, even distant relatives, family members who usually lived separate lives came together on this day. Then came the sound of high heels descending the stairs. Patricia appeared, wearing an emerald green dress with a diamond necklace. Though she wore a perfect smile, something felt unnatural about it. I sensed something cold lurking behind those eyes. "Rachel, what a lovely blouse," she said. I merely nodded slightly, recognizing the sarcasm in her compliment from years of experience. Behind her, the maids paused briefly, watching the scene unfold. Family members took their seats according to the place cards. Robert and Patricia sat at the head of the table, with the elder relatives beside them. We were directed to seats in the middle. Lucas's place was next to mine. But as we approached those seats, my blood ran cold. Instead of the silver service plate, there was a stainless steel dog food bowl on the table. It was filled with brown kibble. The edge was engraved with the word "puppy." For a moment, silence fell. I could hear the gasps of surrounding relatives. One uncle coughed, a cousin let out a small scream. An elderly aunt turned away, while a younger cousin stared at the floor. Lucas's hand gripped my sleeve. I could feel his small fingers trembling. "What is the meaning of this?" William's voice shook with anger burning in his eyes. Then Patricia's cold voice rang out. Raising her glass elegantly, she deliberately spoke slowly. "Why would a child of slum-raised parents need fine dining?" With those words came a thin smile, a perfectly calculated insult. Everyone at the table froze. Robert broke into violent coughing, and one of the maids dropped and shattered a glass. Lucas's small lips trembled as his 8-year-old eyes desperately tried to hold back tears. Watching this scene, something in my heart quietly but definitively transformed into resolve. I slowly stood up. Only the creaking of my chair broke the silence in the dining room. The chandelier cast long shadows across the table. I took my son's small, cold hand. When I squeezed it firmly, I felt a slight pressure in return. Without a word, we left our seats. Behind us, I heard William stand up as well, his angry breathing reaching my ears. Our footsteps echoed on the marble floor as we walked to the entrance. Opening the door, cold air brushed our cheeks. As I helped my child into the back seat, I could hear chaotic voices from inside the house. Aunt's voices of criticism, young cousin's agitated tones, and Robert's shouting. But no one came after us. No one tried to stop us until we got into the car. In the back seat, Lucas trembled slightly. Through the windshield, I looked up at the luxurious mansion. I could see several faces watching us from the second-floor windows. Behind the lace curtains, curious eyes followed us. Only the sound of the engine broke the Thanksgiving silence. On the drive home, no one spoke a word. Just the engine noise cutting through the cold night air. Lucas still shivered slightly in the back seat. The street lights illuminated his exhausted reflection in the car window. Even after entering our warm home, the humiliation we suffered at the Thanksgiving table cast a cold shadow over our hearts. The living room lights, usually warm and welcoming, seemed to cast strange shadows tonight. "Lucas, let's get you in the bath," I said gently, putting my arm around his shoulders. He nodded silently, still unable to find the courage to speak. As I helped him out of his new suit, I felt his small back occasionally trembling. The fine fabric that should have been filled with his tension and excitement. I thought about what had happened tonight. Why did she need to be so cruel to an innocent child? As warm steam filled the bathroom, I gently washed his back. Usually talkative, he remained silent. That silence squeezed my heart. When we returned from the bathroom, he seemed to have regained some composure. After changing into his pajamas, I knelt before him as he sat on the bed. I watched his expression while carefully drying his hair. "I'm sorry, Mom," Lucas suddenly whispered. Those words clutched at my heart. "You've done nothing wrong," I said firmly, embracing him. Tears burst forth from his small body. The emotions he had been desperately holding back flooded out all at once. Warm tears soaked my chest. I just wanted to get along with Grandma. I slowly rubbed his back as he sobbed. I couldn't find words of comfort. I just felt his heart gradually calming in my warm embrace. "Your pastries are the best, Mom." I couldn't help but smile at those words as he wiped away his tears. I sat beside his bed and began reading his usual bedtime story. Exhausted, he fell into a deep sleep during the story. Though traces of tears remained on his sleeping face, his breathing was peaceful. I kissed his forehead lightly and was about to leave the room when I heard a small murmur in his sleep. "Mom." At that voice, I clenched my fists tightly. No matter what, I would protect this child. That determination solidified within me. Leaving the bedroom, I found William in the living room, staring intensely at his mobile phone. His expression showed an anger I had never seen before. It was like seeing a different side of my usually calm husband. "I will never forgive that woman," he growled in a low voice. His clenched fist trembled. Company documents were scattered messily across the coffee table. William. I've had enough. He stood up and dialed his mother's number. I didn't stop him. This confrontation was inevitable. The dial tone seemed unnaturally loud. Why, Mother? Why did you do this? Patricia's voice leaked through the receiver. Words that sounded like excuses or defiance. Her voice still carried its usual arrogance. You thought it was a joke. How can you dismiss such cruel treatment of an 8-year-old child as a joke? William's voice gradually grew louder. The veins in his neck stood out with anger. Listen carefully. This ends our family relationship today. I'm also quitting the company tomorrow. You won't control us anymore. Patricia's voice became distraught, but William hung up. His hand was still trembling slightly. With a deep sigh, he turned to face me. His eyes held determination, though fatigue showed on his brow. I'm sorry, Rachel, for putting you and our son through this. You've done nothing wrong. I used the same words I had just spoken to our son, now directed at my husband. When I gently took his hand, he squeezed back firmly. That night, William kept making phone calls late into the night. First, he explained the situation to his trusted subordinates. Surprisingly, many showed willingness to follow him. They too had harbored dissatisfaction with Patricia's tyrannical management. Mr. William, I'm with you, came the strong words of Tom Watson, a veteran from the sales department. I'll submit my resignation too. Let's work together at the new company, young Sarah Chen declared without hesitation. As encouraging words continued to arrive, William's expression gradually softened. Next came confidential discussions with key clients. Despite the late hour, important clients answered his calls. Many companies who trusted William's sales abilities showed positive reactions to doing business with the new company. We definitely want to continue working with you after your independence, said the CEO of Johnson Group, Boston's largest developer, giving us great hope. As the night wore on, the path to independence gradually became clearer. The next morning, major changes were already underway at Turner Enterprises headquarters. News of William's resignation spread throughout the company. Then excellent employees began submitting their resignations one after another. Long dissatisfied with Patricia's discriminatory behavior, they decided to join William's new company. At this rate, the sales department will collapse, came a desperate report from Human Resources. Major clients are requesting to review their contracts. Finance raised serious concerns. Patricia's outrageous behavior had begun to shake the entire company. A few days later, preparations for establishing the new company were steadily progressing. Office space had been secured in a prime location in Boston's financial district. Funding was also lined up from multiple investors. William's network of connections proved invaluable. Meetings with law firms, setting up IT systems, building the new organizational structure, through day and night preparations, the new company, William Turner Associates, gradually took shape. But on that quiet morning, an unexpected visitor appeared. Open up. Rachel. Instead of using the intercom, the sound of someone banging directly on the door echoed. Patricia's distraught voice. Her shouting could be heard by the neighbors. Through a gap in the curtains, I could see a luxury car roughly parked by the curb. I quietly opened the door. There stood Patricia, in an unfamiliar state. Why did you seduce my son and destroy our family? Her designer suit was disheveled, her usually perfect makeup smeared. She waved her luxury handbag wildly, her face a mixture of anger and sorrow. The mask of social elite and Turner Enterprises CEO had completely fallen away. "Think carefully about who really destroyed the family," I answered calmly but firmly. Just then, we heard movement upstairs. Lucas must have woken up. "You treated your own grandson like a dog. Is that what family does?" Silence. "I won't listen to words from someone of your status." Then William's voice rang out from behind me. "That's enough, Mother." He stood at the door, stepping forward to shield me. My husband's straight-backed figure looked dignified. "Leave. Don't ever show yourself to us again." His voice carried unwavering determination. Patricia stared at her son as if looking at a stranger. For a moment, regret seemed to flash in her eyes. But that emotion was quickly hidden beneath her arrogant expression. "I have my pride too," she said in a trembling voice, then turned on her heel. We silently watched as she got into her luxury car. Her back had completely lost its former dignity. The sound of the door closing echoed quietly, like announcing the start of a new morning. Lucas came down from upstairs and took our hands. In those small hands, we felt hope for our new future. The hallways of Turner Enterprises had lost their former vitality. A week after William's departure, an unusual atmosphere enveloped the entire company. The office floor, once filled with employee energy, was now dominated by heavy silence. Over half of our major clients have requested contract reviews. This quarter's sales forecast is down 40% from last year, reported Finance Director Mr. Gray in a trembling voice at the board meeting. Before him lay a several-inch-thick report. The numbers written in red told the story of the company's critical situation. The decline in the real estate development division was particularly serious, with new project orders almost at a standstill. The turnover rate in the sales department has exceeded 70%. Most remaining employees are actively job hunting. With recent graduates declining their offers, next year's staffing plan has completely collapsed, came the serious report from Human Resources. Following William's departure, talented personnel continued to leave the company. The exodus of young employees was particularly notable, severely depleting the layer that should have been the company's future. Patricia tried to argue in her usual high-handed manner. But her voice lacked its former strength. Signs of fatigue showed through her makeup. "We've received a formal request from institutional investors to hold an emergency shareholders meeting. The agenda includes management restructuring," announced the legal director, causing board members to catch their breath. Pressure from major shareholders was increasing daily. The company's stock price had plummeted, continuing to set new all-time lows. Market capitalization had decreased by 30% in just 1 week. Suddenly, the conference room door burst open. "What is the meaning of this?" Robert stormed in holding a newspaper. The front page headline read, "Turner Enterprises CEO suspected of misappropriating company assets." The Boston Globe's thorough investigative report spread across 3 pages. The article detailed Patricia's misconduct. She had used the company's private jet for personal shopping trips, charging the company about $500,000 annually. The $2 million renovation of her Chestnut Hill home had been processed as company expenses. Furthermore, there was blatant discriminatory treatment of minority employees, opaque promotion criteria, harassment of female employees, and intentional demotion of non-white employees. Harassment of business partners was also reported in detail. Particularly her high-handed attitude towards small businesses, unreasonable price reduction demands, and intentional payment delays, actions that completely violated business ethics. All these allegations have been reported by whistleblowers with evidence. The Securities and Exchange Commission has already contacted us about an investigation, the legal director quietly added. Employees who had long suffered under Patricia's tyrannical management had begun speaking out en masse. Specific testimonies were continuously being submitted to the anonymous hotline. These were legitimate management decisions. Patricia's words had completely lost their former authority. Even in her designer suit, she no longer carried the air of a power holder. Then Robert spoke gravely. The conference room air instantly froze. "Patricia, you will step down as CEO." The conference room fell dead silent. "No, more than that, you'll leave management entirely. Enough is enough. We can't allow the company's reputation to be damaged any further." Robert's voice carried unprecedented strength. Known for his mild temperament, he now showed an uncompromising attitude. His eyes held years of regret and new determination. "Clear out your office immediately." While security staff stood by, Patricia silently began packing her belongings. Her figure no longer showed any trace of the once mighty empress, appearing instead as just a tired middle-aged woman. Her hands trembled slightly as she packed documents into her expensive Birkin bag. The next day, an emergency all-employee meeting was held at Turner Enterprises headquarters. The large hall was filled with an atmosphere mixing anxiety and anticipation. "Effective immediately, I am assuming full authority," Robert's voice echoed through the silent hall. "We will completely reform our discriminatory management policies and build a new system where all employees are evaluated fairly. Specifically, we will immediately implement transparency in promotion criteria, review the compensation system, and establish a diversity promotion committee." Small applause began to rise from the audience. "And..." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I want to sincerely apologize to my son William. My failure to properly supervise has caused deep wounds to him and his family." His words caused a small stir in the hall. Many employees seemed to sense real change in the company from this father's apology. The market also responded positively to the announcement of the new system. The stock price began showing signs of recovery, rising about 15% from its bottom. Even estranged business partners began expressing desire to repair relationships. In particular, the development of new internal systems proceeded rapidly. Complete revision of discriminatory personnel evaluations, enhancement of childcare and nursing care support systems, and active promotion of minority hiring. These initiatives received significant coverage in industry papers. Meanwhile, William Turner Associates was off to a strong start. Just 1 month after establishment, they had already secured multiple major projects. "We've officially signed the large development project with Johnson Group. The contract value is $50 million, reported Tom Watson, formerly William's subordinate and now his right-hand man. His eyes shone with unprecedented brightness. This waterfront development project in Boston had attracted industry attention. The new company's office was full of energy. Talented personnel who had transferred from Turner Enterprises were working enthusiastically in their new environment. The growth of young employees was particularly remarkable, continuously generating new ideas in their free environment. Industry papers favorably reported Williams' independence as bringing fresh wind to the real estate industry. His management philosophy, particularly his emphasis on employee diversity, was highly evaluated. His name quickly became known throughout the industry as a new era real estate developer. One day, an email arrived from Robert. "Son, I feel terrible as your father. If possible, I'd like to talk about the company, and more importantly, about family." His words conveyed a father's earnest desire to break the silence. The attached newspaper article suggested the possibility of collaboration between both companies. William spent a long time considering his reply. He no longer felt hatred or anger. Only a wish to build a new relationship remained in his heart. Finally, he wrote a brief message. "Are you free Sunday afternoon? Lucas wants to see you too." A small step marking the beginning of a new dialogue. It was also the beginning of slow healing for a deeply wounded family. Outside the window, Boston's winter sun quietly illuminated the city. The light shone gently, as if blessing the dawn of a new era. Boston's streets were dressed in Christmas decorations. 1 month after the Thanksgiving incident, cold winds rustled the illuminated street trees as Newbury Street bustled with holiday shoppers. The interior of La Maison d'House was even more lively than usual. Long lines formed for Christmas season specialties like Stollen and Bûche de Noël. "Mom, you're in the newspaper again." Lucas came running excitedly from the back of the shop. "My store had been featured in the Boston Globe as this year's most notable bakery." The article highly praised our product line that added creativity to traditional recipes and the warm atmosphere of the shop. Meanwhile, in the upscale Chestnut Hill neighborhood, a moving truck quietly pulled away. Patricia was forced to leave the mansion she had lived in for many years. The dramatic decrease in income following her CEO resignation and complete exile from society. Her former friends now acted as if she didn't exist. A room in an old Back Bay apartment became her new home. She had to part with most of her luxury furniture and furnishings, keeping only mementos. From the window, the glamorous world of high society where she once reigned now appeared small and distant. At Turner Enterprises, new winds were beginning to blow. Under Robert's direct leadership, corporate culture reform was steadily progressing. Discriminatory practices were completely abolished, replaced by a new evaluation system emphasizing merit and diversity. Then one day, "I'd like to consider a merger between our companies." Robert's proposal to William sent shockwaves through the industry. A vision of father and son joining forces to create a real estate development company for a new era. It meant more than just a business integration. Turner and Turner Associates. The new company name embodied their determination to overcome past conflicts and build a new future. Sunday morning, we enjoyed brunch as a family. Lucas eagerly told his grandfather Robert about baking. His smile shone brightly, as if completely forgetting the tears of Thanksgiving night. "Next, I'm going to make a cake for Grandpa." Those words brought tears to Robert's eyes. William's and my relationship had also grown deeper through this ordeal. His decisiveness and kindness shown during the crisis had strengthened our bond. However, I sometimes think about Patricia, living alone in her Back Bay apartment. They say she sits by the window on holiday afternoons, watching families pass by on the street. Holding an expensive wine glass, quietly reflecting on her former glory. As brilliant Christmas illuminations decorated the city, everything had changed, and something new was about to begin. On a weekend morning in early summer, soft sunlight filtered through the lace curtains and spilled into the room. I couldn't help but smile at the sound of David tidying up in the backyard. As usual, he had started preparing for our weekend barbecue. The sound of the broom sweeping the old wooden deck and his occasional humming announced the pleasant start of the weekend. "Mom, I changed Lily's diaper. And I fed her milk too." Looking back from the sofa, I saw Emily proudly holding baby Lily. My heart warmed at the sight of my 9-year-old daughter cradling her sister in pink pajamas with such practiced movements beyond her years. Around Lily, Emily had carefully arranged her favorite stuffed animals, standing guard like sentries. "Thank you, Emily. You're doing such a wonderful job. You're such a caring big sister." Lily was grinning in her sister's arms. At 8 months old, she was everyone's little darling. Her chubby cheeks and deep blue eyes, just like David's, were adorably endearing to everyone who saw them. Emily, in particular, had become noticeably brighter since her sister's birth. Helping with her sister's care had become part of her daily routine. "Breakfast is ready." David's cheerful voice called from the garden. "Today's menu is special." We headed outside. On the well-maintained lawn, still fragrant with morning dew, the table and chairs were already neatly arranged. The white wooden garden furniture had just been repaired by David during last month's DIY project. Looking over, I could see his favorite pancakes cooking on the grill. The aromatic scent of coffee blended into the crisp morning air. "I added blueberries this morning. And the maple syrup is organic, sent from my parents' place," David announced proudly. Though busy as an IT security consultant at Google, he was committed to making breakfast himself every weekend. He mostly worked remotely on weekdays, prioritizing time with family. Sometimes, memories of the past cast shadows over these peaceful moments. I remember the day my divorce from Mike was finalized 2 years ago. My ex-husband, who worked as a real estate agent, was practically a workaholic who rarely made time for family. Even on holidays, it became normal for him to suddenly leave for property viewings. The divorce proceedings were more painful than I had imagined. The custody battle was particularly fierce, taking a heavy emotional toll on Emily, who was 7 at the time. I often woke up to her crying in the middle of the night. How many times had my heart ached when she asked, "Does Daddy not love me anymore?" That's when I met David. He had come to Greenwich Hospital, where I work as a nurse in the pediatric ward, to implement a new IT system. Somehow, he naturally blended into our lives. Emily, in particular, took to David right away. Baseball became their shared hobby, and they often went to Yankees games together on holidays. I believe his kindness and patience gradually helped heal my daughter's emotional wounds. A year after we married, Lily was born. The arrival of our new family member deepened our bonds even more. Emily became an ideal big sister, and David showered both girls with equal affection. Now, weekend barbecues and family lunches after Sunday church service have become our precious traditions. Lately, though, something has been worrying me. Mike, who had been out of touch for a while, suddenly started making contact again. He seems to be attempting a superficial reconciliation along with his new girlfriend, Jessica. Jessica, who works at a law firm, has been oddly eager to arrange meetings with Emily. While Emily seemed to enjoy time with her father during previous visits, I've noticed something different about her demeanor recently that concerns me. "Hey, Mom," Emily's voice brought me back to the present. "Dad's pancakes are really delicious. Even more delicious than usual. Yes, I want to cherish this happy breakfast time right now." I gently stroked my daughter's head, imprinting this warm scene in my heart: Lily's excited squeals, Emily's carefree smile, and David's gentle gaze. Our smiles around the garden table in the early summer sunshine, this is the true happiness we've finally achieved after such a long journey. After breakfast, time flowed peacefully as it usually did on weekends. While putting Lily down for her nap, I watched my baby's sleeping face. Her pink, silky baby hair swayed softly above the white lace bassinet. Looking at her angelic sleeping face, my maternal instinct to protect her pulsed strongly in my chest. Emily was working on her homework in her room upstairs. The sound of her pencil and occasional muttering could be heard each time I passed by in the hallway. I could imagine her struggling earnestly with math problems. David had finished tending to the garden and was preparing for remote work in his study. The rhythmic sound of his keyboard tapping echoed through the house. I sat on the living room sofa, checking my work schedule for the following week. The pediatric ward at Greenwich Hospital would be getting busier with children suffering from allergies this season. The schedule indicated it would be particularly crowded next week. As I was taking notes while leaning against the light blue cushion, the doorbell suddenly rang. A little past 2 p.m. on Saturday. I tilted my head at the unexpected visitor. Coming. When I opened the door, a delivery person was holding a large box with the logo of an unfamiliar luxury brand. The pale pink box was decorated with an elegant gold ribbon. I recognized the logo as being from an upscale children's clothing brand that Emily particularly loved. Package for Mrs. Wilson. Please sign here for confirmation. After signing on the electronic tablet and receiving the package, it wasn't as heavy as it looked. Checking the sender, I saw it was from Jessica Parker, Mike's new girlfriend. I remembered how she had eagerly talked about wanting to become close with Emily during their recent visit. Sitting on the living room sofa, I carefully unwrapped the package. As I undid the ribbon, I felt a childlike excitement building up. Inside the box was a handwritten letter on cream-colored premium stationery. Elegant handwriting filled the page with careful letters. Dear Lily, I'm sending this with heartfelt wishes as a new member of your family. I chose it from Emily's favorite brand. Please allow us to watch over your growth. From Jessica. Beneath the letter, a soft pale pink teddy bear peeked out. Made of premium mohair fabric, it looked exceptionally pleasant to touch. Its small black eyes sparkled like real crystals. Around its neck was a gold ribbon matching the box, with a small star charm attached to the end. It was indeed a lovely, high-end stuffed animal that Emily would like. Oh, how lovely! I couldn't help but exclaim out loud. It was a thoughtful gift that showed Jessica's consideration. Recently, she had been subtly attentive during visits with Emily, preparing movie tickets for children's films or buying Emily's favorite cakes. Things with Mike also seemed to be improving gradually. Lily's room already had a white shelf installed for displaying stuffed animals. David had assembled it last month during his day off. The bear would make a lovely accent piece there. Emily, could you come down for a minute? I called up to the second floor. Soon, I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. Emily's cheeks still held a serious expression from being absorbed in her math homework. What is it, Mom? Look, Jessica sent a present for Lily. It's a teddy bear from your favorite brand. Isn't it cute? The moment Emily saw the teddy bear I held out with a smile, her expression completely changed. The color drained from her face as she stepped backward. Her eyes were wide open as if seeing something terrifying. Emily. As I stood up, feeling anxious about my daughter's sudden change, my normally active and cheerful daughter seemed like a different person, cowering in fear. It's a cute teddy bear. Let's display it in Lily's room. As I took a step forward saying this, Emily's scream-like cry interrupted me. No! Don't bring it near the baby. Emily's voice was trembling, and her hands were shaking slightly. Tears welled up in her eyes, and her whole small body seemed to be dominated by fear. Why? My voice shook with surprise. The air in the living room felt like it had frozen in an instant. Even the sunlight streaming through the windows suddenly felt cold. Because that teddy bear. Emily choked on her words. Tears streamed down her cheeks. With her small fists tightly clenched, her whole body trembling, she struggled to force out the words. 2 months ago, when I visited Daddy's house. Her voice was hoarse and broken. Her eyes seemed to hold memories too frightening to recall. I saw videos of the same teddy bear on Jessica's computer. But it wasn't a normal teddy bear. A chill ran down my spine. As a nurse, I had an instinctive bad feeling. Daddy and Jessica were talking to someone unknown. They said, "This is perfect. No one will notice," and then, Daddy told me. Emily's confession was interrupted by tears. Her trembling voice grew progressively quieter, finally becoming barely audible. If I told anyone about Lily. The moment I heard those words, something switched inside me. As a nurse and a mother, I instinctively understood the situation. Working daily with a pledge to protect children's safety, everything connected instantly. There was no hesitation. Emily, thank you for telling me. I held my trembling daughter tightly. Her small body shook in my arms. Feeling that trembling, I calmly decided on my next actions. Mama will protect you both, I promise. I took out my smartphone and immediately called the police. Then I sent a message to David. My fingers were shaking, but my voice was surprisingly steady. Emergency. Come to the living room immediately. I've called the police. Don't touch the teddy bear. I carefully returned the bear to its original box and closed the lid. I placed the box on the kitchen counter, furthest from the entrance. It needed to be preserved as evidence, with minimal handling. Emily still clung to me, trembling slightly. As I gently stroked her shoulders, I strengthened my resolve. The peaceful life we had desperately built up until now. I won't allow anyone to threaten my precious family. David burst out of his study and rushed into the living room, trying to grasp the situation. His professional instincts seemed to immediately sense the gravity of the matter. Behind him, the sound of sirens grew closer. Upstairs, Lily, awakened by the noise, began to cry. But I was unusually calm. My maternal instinct told me this was the right decision. I clearly understood what needed to be done at this moment to protect my precious daughters. While holding my daughter and waiting for the police to arrive, I quietly felt a deep anger. Anger at an unforgivable threat to my family. After the police patrol car arrived with sirens blaring, the atmosphere in the Wilson house changed dramatically. Police officers in uniform moved swiftly from the entrance to the living room. Crime scene tape was put up for preservation, and camera flashes went off taking evidence photos. A tense atmosphere enveloped the entire house. I'm Sarah Johnson. The detective stood before us. First, let's ensure the children's safety. In cases like this, perpetrators might act quickly. Under Detective Johnson's direction, Lily and Emily were moved to a separate room. Dr. Catherine Walker, a child psychology specialist, was urgently called to accompany Emily. With her warm voice and approach to understanding children's hearts, she helped ease Emily's tension. While I worried about Emily developing new trauma, she was surprisingly composed. "Mom, I'm okay. I'll tell them everything. I have to protect Lily." Seeing my daughter smile and say this, I felt my chest tighten. I could sense strength and determination beyond her 9 years. David immediately offered to assist with the investigation as an IT security expert. He began coordinating with the police technical team, leveraging his experience at Google. With this type of surveillance device, we might be able to identify the data transmission destination. By tracking wireless communication traces, we can narrow down the receiver's location. He began analyzing the teddy bear with the police technical team. Using advanced equipment like X-ray scanners and radio wave detectors, they scanned the stuffed animal's internal structure. The results confirmed our worst fears. A miniature surveillance camera was embedded in the teddy bear's eyes. It was capable of 4K high-resolution recording and even had night vision capabilities. The battery and transmitter were cleverly positioned to be completely undetectable from the outside. Furthermore, it contained a built-in microphone that could record audio and enable two-way communication. "This isn't a modified commercial product," David's expression hardened. While pointing at the 3D scan image of the internal structure displayed on the monitor, he continued his explanation. "This is a custom-made item. It requires considerable technology and funding. There are only a limited number of facilities in the world capable of manufacturing such equipment." At those words, Detective Johnson shot a sharp glance. The investigators quickly took notes. "So this suggests the likelihood of an organized crime operation. If we can identify the manufacturer, it might lead to uncovering the entire organization." Emily's testimony also confirmed the seriousness of the situation. 2 months ago, during a visit, she had accidentally seen footage on Jessica's computer screen. It showed footage of other children, captured through similar teddy bears. There were children I didn't know, footage of them sleeping. Daddy and Jessica were talking on the phone with someone while watching the footage. As I listened to Emily's testimony, I couldn't help but hold her tight. Dr. Walker carefully observed Emily's condition, making sure to take breaks at appropriate times. It was a consideration to minimize psychological trauma. The investigation proceeded rapidly. A search warrant was executed at Jessica's apartment, and her computer and smartphone were seized. Digital forensics analysis revealed shocking facts one after another. Encrypted communication records. Traces of multiple international money transfers. Emails indicating arrangements for fake passports. Records of anonymous communications using VPNs. All of these pointed to the existence of an organized kidnapping plan. The technical team worked around the clock, decrypting encrypted files one by one. "This is turning out to be a much bigger case than we imagined," Detective Johnson shared the interim report of the 48-hour investigation with us. Her expression showed conviction backed by years of experience. "Jessica Parker likely has connections to an international human trafficking organization. It seems she was using her position at the law firm to collect information about children from divorced families. They particularly targeted cases with custody disputes." My body trembled at those words. Were they targeting Lily through Emily? Just thinking about it sent chills down my spine. To think my family had been targeted by such a heinous crime. "What about Mike Thompson's involvement?" David asked in a low voice. His voice betrayed barely contained anger. "He is also one of the accomplices. financial records show he received substantial advance payments. Over the past 6 months, there have been suspicious deposits totaling over $500,000 through multiple accounts. The plan was meticulously detailed. Mike and Jessica had built up trust through official visits, aiming for an opportunity to eventually abduct Lily. The surveillance camera-equipped teddy bear was a tool to understand our home situation and daily patterns. According to the technical team's analysis, the transmitted data was routed through multiple servers, ultimately being consolidated on a server in a Middle Eastern country. The International Criminal Police Organization had joined the investigation, working to uncover the organization's international network. "We've also identified their escape route," Detective Johnson explained while operating a tablet. The screen displayed a complex route map. They planned to move through Canada to Europe, then to the Middle East. "We've already identified local collaborators. Coordination with immigration authorities is also in place." As the investigation progressed, security measures for our safety were also established. The police set up 24-hour surveillance, and schools and daycare centers were notified. Plainclothes officers were stationed at Greenwich Academy where Emily attended, monitoring for suspicious individuals. Inquiries were made with neighboring residents, establishing a community-wide watchfulness. "Arrest warrants have already been issued," Detective Johnson's voice carried definite confidence. 20 years of experience was coming to life for this moment. "Their movements are all under surveillance. We won't give them any chance to escape. Special units are also on standby." True to her words, the investigation team moved quickly. New evidence was gathered one after another, uncovering the network of accomplices. Stakeout teams were already positioned around Mike and Jessica. Their actions were recorded 24 hours a day by surveillance cameras and agents. Before leaving, Detective Johnson placed her hand on my shoulder. That hand carried the warmth cultivated through years of investigative work. "Your daughter's courage might be the key to dismantling this organization. She's truly a remarkable child. Thanks to her testimony, we can save other potential victims." Those words brought tears to my eyes. Indeed, Emily's intuition and courage may have saved not only us but many other children. I felt renewed gratitude for the strength hidden in her small body. Upstairs, David was putting Emily and Lily to bed. While police officers patrolled around the house, I gazed at the night sky through the living room window. During the intense 48-hour investigation, my heart had been flooded with various emotions: anger, sadness, and above all, a strong determination to protect my beloved family. In the moonlit garden, early summer flowers had begun to bloom. Tomorrow, the arrests would begin. And our new battle would begin as well. It would be a battle to heal wounded hearts and strengthen our family bonds even further. The suspects are on the move. Detective Johnson's alert came at 4 a.m., before dawn. Her calm voice reached my ears as I awoke to my phone's ringtone. According to reports from the stakeout team, Mike and Jessica were attempting to flee the country earlier than planned. They had both left their respective residences in the middle of the night and were heading to John F. Kennedy International Airport. "We have a complete containment strategy in place. Full coordination with the FBI, Port Authority Police, and airport security. Please don't worry." At the airport, over 50 plainclothes officers were already strategically positioned. Every possible escape route was under surveillance, from security checkpoints and departure gates to the main access roads leading to the airport. Special units were also standing by. I checked on the sleeping Emily and Lily's room, then joined David in the living room to monitor developments. As we sat unable to sleep from tension, regular situation reports came in from the police. The arrest operation turned out to be more dramatic than expected. Mike appeared at the baggage counter at 6:12 a.m. Dressed in an expensive suit with his usual confident expression, he held a first-class ticket to the Middle East. 10 minutes later, Jessica entered through a different entrance. In a beige trench coat and large sunglasses, she was clearly trying to disguise herself. The two maintained several meters distance, pretending to be strangers. However, everything ended just before the security checkpoint. Multiple plainclothes officers moved simultaneously to apprehend them. Amid the commotion of tourists and airport staff, Mike and Jessica were handcuffed before they could resist. Officers reported that the color drained from Mike's face in an instant, while Jessica remained expressionless, as if she had resigned herself to this outcome. Several forged passports and $500,000 in cash were found in Jessica's luggage. Mike's laptop contained detailed documents about the kidnapping plan. Most shocking was the discovery of falsified documents prepared to take custody of Lily. They had even planned for another woman to enter Canada as Lily's guardian immediately after their departure. During interrogation, the full scope of the case gradually came to light. The two showed completely different reactions in separate interrogation rooms. While Thompson is maintaining his right to remain silent, Parker has already started talking. "We're getting quite specific information about the organization's operations," explained Prosecutor James Morrison, his expression grave. He outlined the charges, which would likely include attempted kidnapping, child welfare law violations, and involvement in organized crime. The case's severity had increased particularly with the revelation of connections to an international human trafficking organization. Preparations for the trial proceeded carefully. The most crucial issue was how to handle Emily's testimony. After multiple consultations with child psychology experts and lawyers, methods were discussed to minimize Emily's psychological burden. The testimony will be given from a separate room via video link. "We're taking maximum consideration for privacy and safety," Dr. Walker explained to us. On the large conference room table lay detailed plans for Emily's psychological care. Emily won't need to face the defendants directly. She can also take breaks as needed. "We'll constantly monitor her mental state and immediately halt testimony if we determine the burden is becoming too great." During the preparation period, we cherished our time as a family. David increased his work-from-home days to spend as much time as possible with us. Emily gradually regained her daily routine while attending counseling 3 times a week. Her night crying decreased, and her behavior at school improved. Then came the day of the trial. The Connecticut Supreme Court courtroom was wrapped in a solemn atmosphere. In this historic building from the 1890s, everything from the heavy mahogany furnishings to the tall columns and sunlight streaming through stained glass windows spoke to the importance of this place. The prosecution's opening statement emphasized the malicious nature of the crime. The connections to international human trafficking organizations, the meticulous planning, and above all, the fact that a biological father had attempted to endanger his own child created a heavy atmosphere in the courtroom. The jury members wore stern expressions as they viewed evidence including surveillance camera footage and communication records. However, the biggest shock in the trial came from Jessica's testimony. "I was part of a larger organization. Over the past few years, I've been involved in at least 12 kidnappings within the United States," she began in a trembling voice. The large screen in the courtroom displayed detailed documents about the organization one after another, the worldwide human trafficking network, the financial systems supporting it, and the methods that cleverly exploited legal loopholes in various countries. Her testimony provided the FBI with new leads for investigation. The testimony lasted 3 days, revealing the organization's true nature. While the court clerk desperately took notes, Jessica continued to speak, sometimes choking up. Her testimony had led to arrests in other regions as well. Mike's defense claimed he had mental health issues. They argued that work-related stress and the emotional loss from divorce had impaired his judgment. The existence of substantial debt was also revealed and presented as a motivating factor. However, the results of the psychiatric evaluation negated these claims. The defendant possessed full judgment capabilities. In fact, his actions show evidence of extremely methodical planning, testified a prominent psychiatrist. The detailed diagnostic report submitted to the court contained thorough analyses of Mike's personality and behavioral patterns. Then came the most important testimony. Emily's testimony proved to be the turning point in the trial. Her image transmitted through video link, though small, was resolute. The entire courtroom held its breath at the sight of the 9-year-old girl in a pale blue dress, looking straight ahead. I heard Daddy and Jessica talking about that teddy bear. On the screen, there were images of unknown children sleeping, and then, about Lily, about taking her abroad. At her testimony, the jurors' expressions visibly changed. Several female jurors had tears in their eyes. Emily's testimony lasted 2 hours. Though taking several breaks, she managed to describe her experience in her own words until the end. When I hugged her in the separate room after her testimony, I felt truly proud of my daughter's strength. The trial lasted 2 weeks. On the final day, the verdict was delivered. The courtroom was packed with spectators. With major national media watching, the judge solemnly began speaking. The defendant Mike Thompson is hereby sentenced to 10 years in prison. The judge's voice resonated through the courtroom. The defendant Jessica Parker, in consideration of her cooperation with the investigation, is sentenced to 5 years in prison. Furthermore, a complete restraining order was issued against Mike, and his parental rights to Emily were fully revoked. In the verdict reasoning, the judge particularly emphasized the importance of protecting children's safety and rights. After the verdict, Detective Johnson visited us. Her expression showed a sense of accomplishment along with a new sense of mission. With this verdict, larger investigations are being set in motion. Related organizations are already being dismantled in 3 countries. Your family's courage will save many children. I nodded silently. A long battle had finally come to an end. But this was also a new beginning. From now on, we would need to overcome this experience and walk forward as a stronger family. At dusk, we sat down for dinner as a family. The table was laid with warm dishes prepared by David. Emily showed a genuinely relaxed smile for the first time in a while. Lily laughed adorably on her sister's lap. David watched over us with his usual warm gaze. Outside the window, the summer breeze gently rustled the trees. With the arrival of a new season, our lives were also beginning to turn to a new page. The family bonds that had survived this ordeal had grown stronger than ever before. One summer morning, a year after the incident. Avoiding the strong western sun in the living room, we were having breakfast in the sunroom set up on the east side of our new home. In a quiet residential area of Stamford, a little distance from Greenwich. This new life in a house protected by high walls and the latest security system was approaching its 6th month. Outside the window, the dew-covered lawn sparkled in the sunlight. At the back of the garden was a small playground with swings and slides for the children. A form of love that David had assembled during his days off. "Mom, can I take pictures of Lily and me in the garden this afternoon? The roses are so beautiful," Emily asked while munching on pancakes drowned in maple syrup. She had recently become passionate about photography. Taking snapshots of daily life had become her hobby with the digital camera David gave her for Christmas. Her cloud album already contained over 1,000 photos. Moments of our new life captured through her perspective, family smiles, seasonal flowers, and sometimes even stray cats. Of course. The roses are just starting to bloom. This variety is at its best in early summer. In the flower bed David had created on weekends, roses of various colors were blooming proudly. Red, pink, yellow, white. Each color seemed to symbolize our hopes. One reason we chose this new house was this spacious garden. A space where children could play freely. And above all, an environment where safety could be ensured. Beyond the high walls, security guards contracted by the police patrolled 24 hours a day. We decided to move immediately after the trial ended. We wanted to mark a new beginning by changing everything. Although we worried about Emily's school transfer, she quickly adapted to the new environment. With the warm support of her teacher, Mrs. Brown, she had become popular in her class. The effects of twice-weekly psychological counseling were also showing steady results, with her night crying almost completely gone. "Dad, are we going to watch baseball this weekend too? Can I have a hot dog like last time?" Emily snuggled up to David affectionately. She had only started calling him Dad last month. Though it happened suddenly, I still vividly remember David's eyes welling up with joy. He had simply held Emily tightly without saying a word. "Of course. Let's take Lily this time too. I think she'll like the Yankees' new mascot character." At David's response, Emily broke into a wide smile. Lily, now 20 months old, let out a happy "yay" from her high chair. Her newly emerging vocabulary was healing the entire family. Over this year, each member of our family had changed and grown. I myself had regained confidence as a mother. The certainty that my quick decisions during that incident were correct had become a support in my daily parenting. At the hospital, I had become more sensitive to cases with possible abuse or neglect. I was also participating in creating new guidelines to protect children's safety, utilizing my experience alongside my colleagues. David had grown into an even warmer father. Although still busy with his work at Google, he prioritized family time. He increased his work-from-home days and actively took charge of dropping off and picking up the children. His office desk wall was reportedly covered with photos of the children. His colleagues called him the ultimate family man, and he had become a role model for new ways of working. Emily's changes were the most notable of all. Though her emotional wounds might not be completely healed, she was finding her own ways to overcome them. Photography as a new hobby seemed to be supporting her heart. She recently won first prize in the school essay contest with the theme, My Family. That composition expressed deep love for her new family, gained through overcoming the past. And occasionally, we heard news about the two serving their sentences. Mike continued his imprisonment in federal prison. He was receiving treatment from a psychiatrist 3 times a week and showing signs of gradual remorse. The attending psychiatrist reported that he was actively engaging in treatment for narcissistic personality disorder. While all letters to Emily were destroyed through the court, we heard he had recently reduced writing them altogether. Jessica was actively cooperating with investigations in exchange for a lighter sentence. Her testimony had led to the dismantling of related organizations in 3 countries. 16 children had been rescued and begun new lives. She was enthusiastically participating in rehabilitation programs and expressed a desire to work in victim support after her release. Her cooperation was significantly contributing to dismantling international human trafficking organizations. "Hey, why don't we take a family photo today? I think it would look really beautiful with the roses in the garden as a background," Emily suggested, holding her camera after finishing cleaning up breakfast. She had even prepared her recently purchased tripod. "Since it's your day off and Dad's here too, I want to put Lily in her new dress." "That's a lovely idea. That white dress would look perfect on Lily. Maybe I'll wear my new blouse too." Emily's self-timer captured our family in the garden. With the fragrant blooming roses in the background, David put his arm around my shoulder, and Emily held Lily up with a smile. The morning's sunlit garden sparkled like a sea of light. "This is my real family. I love them so much." Just before the shutter clicked, Emily's whispered words deeply touched my heart. At that moment, Lily clearly spoke her first words, "Love you." The camera flash went off. I deeply etched that moment in my heart. This was true happiness. A precious moment of our family, bound stronger through trials. With the arrival of a new season, we take another step forward into the future. Surely, even more happiness awaits us there.